Did you know that Assetto Corsa right now is more popular than ever? From the last Assetto Corsa update done in 2019 to now 2024, it almost tripled the player base. One of the main reasons is that the modding scene injects continuing interest in the game. The mod development creates larger and larger interest, as it is very large in scope, which in turn creates communities, which in turn creates even more interest. This positive reinforcement loop in Assetto Corsa, with the modding community in the center, is a reason why it is consistently gaining players with the PC release. Now, with Assetto Corsa 2 upon us, I think this kinda needs to change a bit. The modding community basically gave Assetto Corsa a new lease in life. It gave it a lot of life of its own and allowed it to flourish in ways that nobody expected, including adding the necessary complexities and features to the game that were needed from the start. I'm talking about features that weren't added because they weren't considered or even thought possible by Kunos. With Assetto Corsa 2 announced, one can wonder if it can feel the boots of Assetto Corsa 10 years after its launch. Here's the thing, Assetto Corsa is really significant for sim racing and really significant for a lot of people. Therefore, Assetto Corsa 2 can't be just the next title down the line for Kunos. It really needs to be the next Assetto Corsa with all that we associate with. We're talking about the variety of content, the excellent physics, the features that come with the mods and are on Competizione as well, and of course, the modding support. Let's imagine this. Let's say that Assetto Corsa 2 comes out and ends up being a really good game in the levels of Competizione in terms of quality, and we're talking about models, tracks, excellent physics, and so on. But like Competizione, it won't have any mods. Everything would be closed off to DLCs or free content, and let's say that the DLCs are fantastic in terms of value and content. Surely it would have buyers and players, but would it have the same success or even the same long-term appeal? I really don't think so. But then again, I believe Assetto Corsa will have modding support. Something has been out saying it had, but I'm not too sure. Kunos, I don't think they have come forward with it. But if it does have modding support, hopefully it will be at the level or better than Assetto Corsa. But even if that's the case, it's still going to take a bit for modders and users to migrate because of the mods. Replicating past successes is really hard. Even if the formula is exactly the same, it doesn't really mean that the success is guaranteed. So ask yourself, when Assetto Corsa 2 comes along, and it does have really excellent modding support, would you gravitate towards it? How long and what would it take to become your main sim? I have seen many saying that they wouldn't, even with the mods. So a new Assetto Corsa wouldn't guarantee a full transition from the community, even in the event that AC2 would be a true successor. Really big reason is PC specifications, and this is something that is unavoidable when moving to a new game, especially so long after the release of the original. 10 years is about 3rd or 4th gen Intel or GTX 900 series. If there's already a significant amount of people with difficulties running Assetto Corsa as it is, Assetto Corsa 2, Unreal 5 engine or not, or Kunos own engine or not, it will definitely restrict them. This happened with Competizione as well. It will be somewhat expected to happen as well with Assetto Corsa 2, though Assetto Corsa Competizione was more directed to a GT3 racing crowd, so it has more types of competitive racing, and because of it, it doesn't really have so much of a casual player base. This means that the ACC player base will definitely spend more money in upgrades and hardware, making the hardware issue not so prevalent, unless of course you are using it in VR, but honestly that's really another can of worms. Also, the no VR no buy people, let yourself know in the comments, would you buy this if it doesn't have VR? Still, there is definitely more in Assetto Corsa 2 that needs to be addressed. It's not just about the modding, which will be, in this case, the game itself. Mainly the content and career mode. This might not be so important for those in the PC because modding may be part of the game, but with the game going towards the consoles, the single-player content is definitely important, and Assetto Corsa had a lot of issues with content in my opinion. First of all, we need to look at the track selection because this is important, of course. It needs to have fun, recognizable tracks, but also some that are iconic and good for racing. maybe a mix of FIA Grade A tracks, smaller iconic tracks, and a few that might not be so common, like Vallelunga and Magione were. The selection was okay, but it had issues, and with Assetto Corsa 2, this definitely needs to be expanded a little bit with a wider appeal. The same goes for car selection, which was the main point of contention for me and is something really strange in Assetto Corsa 1. You'd get a little bit of everything, which is fun. You get GT2s, GT3s, GTEs, of course, but also other type of racing cars, spec series even. Then some racing classes like LMDHs or old ATMs, but most surprisingly, a variety of road cars that either wouldn't match anything in the game in terms of balance of performance, or that it lacked quite a bit in scope. Since there was not, at the time, and I'm assuming there won't be a way to raise performance or tune a car having sedans or SUVs that are not matching performance to any other car, it made from some selections essentially worthless after driving them a bit. I mean, what is the point of SUVs when the SUVs present don't have the same performance? Or even when some of the super sedans like the Quadrifoglio and the M4 are really not matched for performance. Either the selection of cars needs to be a little more closely matched, or there needs to be a way to, have the performance points adjusted so we can use these side by side and you can have a race in them. And you have specific cars, like one that is pretty fun, but honestly kind of irrelevant, the Celica Group A. There aren't any rallies, and there was really only one point-to-point, which was Trento Bondone. So what is really the point of this car? It was a DLC nonetheless, and really just one track to use it on it. Of course, this can be expanded with mods, but what is really the point of adding this to the game? The DLCs in Assetto Corsa 1 were more themed than anything. Some of them had really strange choices that were particularly suited for the content that was about in the DLC, but I think the DLCs in Assetto Corsa Competizione made more sense. So hopefully Kunos brings the same thought process of bringing content as they did in Competizione, and regardless if it's AC or ACC, one can say that Kunos does know how to bring lots and lots of value on their DLCs. You don't really pay much for a lot of content. I do have a last point, which is important, and that is the career mode. This might not be a central point for many users, especially on the PC. There is, though, a huge portion of players that want a coherent career mode with decent AI for competition. Assetto Corsa had none of that. It had some career races, single player with AI, some challenges, nothing coherent, themed, or with a sense of progression like Gran Turismo, Forza, or even Need for Speed Shift. Some will likely say that since Assetto Corsa is a simulator, a career mode will not be required. After all, it's supposed to be a sim, you don't need that. I'm not really in favor of that argument. I think career modes should be standard for new titles, not just do a season kind of career, but the theme aspects or even the goofy stuff. They should be parts of a career mode, not just because of the fun part, but also it's a way to learn the ins and outs of a game or learn what sim racing is about for those coming in. I really think that Assetto Corsa cannot only be a gateway for sim racing, but actually a teaching tool by incorporating a proper career mode. It is especially important for those in consoles or those who don't want to do multiplayer. After all, a generalistic sim racing title can be inclusive to those of different skill levels, for those who really don't want to do multiplayer, or those who just want to, learn a little bit without so much pressure. Assetto Corsa is truly a special sim racing title. It's basically something for everyone. The modding community was as important as the game itself to make all of this successful, but I don't think for Assetto Corsa 2, Kunos should rely on them to make a successful title. The title should be feature complete from the start, so the modding community should center themselves in other things. The next few months and years should be really interesting, starting really soon with Nordschleife on ACC. But for Assetto Corsa 2, hopefully it will be what Assetto Corsa has been for the last few years and will have a title for the next 10 years.